끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. The South Korean government delivers return-to-work orders to trainee doctors by visiting their homes in person, noting that they have until tomorrow to end their walkouts without facing suspension and prosecution. Starting next week, South Korea and the U.S. will begin their annual combined joint military drills, the Freedom Shield, upgrading combat readiness amid the North's escalating threats. Around 50 field training exercises are in store, more than double compared to last year. The number of new babies born in South Korea sunk to a fresh low last year, also breaking the country's own record for the world's lowest fertility rate. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with mounting tensions between the South Korean government and doctors over the medical school admissions hike, with the Thursday return-to-work deadline nearing. With thousands of trainee doctors having resigned from their posts in protest, authorities went door-to-door delivering return-to-work orders, reiterating that they have 1 day left to end their walkouts before holding them legally responsible. Our Lee Soo-jin leads us off.
There's only 1 day left until the deadline set by the South Korean government for doctors to return to work. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, in a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters on Wednesday, urged trainee doctors to return, stressing that it is unacceptable for a doctor to leave their patient's side no matter the reason.
The prolonged walkouts of trainee doctors are leading to even more patient discomfort, as well as disappointment and worry from intensive care patients and their families. Burden on medical personnel filling the gaps is also growing.
Officials from the Ministry of Health and Welfare also visited the homes of trainee doctors in person on the same day to deliver return-to-work orders. The orders have previously been issued through mail or text messages. The South Korean government on Monday issued orders for trainee doctors who've staged walkouts in protest of an increase in the medical school admissions quota. The walkouts have led to cancellations of surgeries and other treatments, leading to concerns about continued delays. To address these concerns, Prime Minister Han discussed emergency measures to strengthen the medical care system, such as hiring replacement medical personnel and providing overtime and holiday pay. The government also plans to dispatch military doctors in mid-March to prevent further delays in emergency operations. Those who do not return to work by Thursday will have their medical licenses suspended or face additional legal action. South Korea's medical law also stipulates that doctors and other medical personnel who do not respond to return-to-work orders can be subject to up to 3 years in prison. The Health Ministry plans to begin tallying the number of trainee doctors who do not return to work next Monday, the first working day after the Thursday deadline. Then the ministry is expected to file a complaint with the police that will officially initiate legal procedures. The police are expected to issue arrest warrants for those who do not respond to a summons without reasonable cause. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's population continues to shrink, with the number of new babies born sinking to a fresh low last year, also breaking the country's own record for the world's lowest fertility rate. Our Park Gun-woo has this report.
South Korea's population saw a further decline last year. According to preliminary data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of newborns in 2023 was at an all-time low of 230,000, down 7.7% on year. That figure has been decreasing yearly since 2015. The total fertility rate in 2023 also fell to its lowest annual figure of 0.72 per woman, a fall of 0.06 from the previous year. An official from Statistics Korea predicts that the number could fall even further.
Our forecast for the total fertility rate in 2024 made last year was 0.68. We think it will possibly be around that number.
The figure for quarter 4 was 0.65, the first time the total fertility rate fell below 0.7 for any quarter. The official added that fewer marriages during COVID-19 attributed to the shrink of the total fertility rate in 2023, and that there's a possibility that this could affect the figure for this year too. But with a slight increase in the number of registered marriages last year, the total fertility rate could rise in the next 2 years. Data also showed that the number of deaths last year dropped slightly by around 5% on year, with a total of over 350,000. In 2022, there had been a surge due to COVID-19. Still, with the number of deaths exceeding the number of births, the country's total population last year saw a natural decline of more than 120,000. While saying that the population will not be able to rise back quickly, another expert says that efforts do need to be made now.
The result of low births for the last 20 to 30 years will be seen for about the next 3 decades. So there is the need to come up with policies adjusting to the shrinking society.
This, he says, lies with policymakers to come up with birth encouragement policies. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
President Yoon today called on South Korea's military to take an immediate and overwhelming response to North Korea's provocations, vowing to strengthen deterrence and trilateral security cooperation with Washington and Tokyo. This came at a commissioning ceremony held at the Cadet Military School in Gwaesan-gun County, Chungcheongbuk-do Province on Wednesday, as the president thanked and encouraged those being commissioned in the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. He warned that the regime may continue to engage in provocations and psychological warfare to disrupt South Korean society, especially ahead of its parliamentary elections in April. He said during these times, the military must unite with the people to resolutely defeat such attempts from the North. Starting next week for 11 days, South Korea and the U.S. will begin their annual combined joint military drills, the Freedom Shield. Upgrading combat readiness against the North's escalating threats. Around 50 field training exercises are in store, more than double compared to last year. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has the details.
Starting next Monday, the military forces of South Korea and the U.S. will hold their major combined exercise, the Freedom Shield. In a joint press briefing on Wednesday, the two countries explained that the computer-simulated command post training will focus on conducting multi-domain operations in countering North Korea's nuclear operations.
The Republic of Korea and the United States militaries will conduct the Freedom Shield exercise to increase combined readiness and strengthen combined defensive posture for 11 days, from March 4th through the 14th.
They said the training will be based on scenarios that reflect diverse threats within the security environment, such as drills detecting and targeting cruise missiles. They've also decided to increase the number of field training exercises on land, at sea, and in the air to increase interoperability.
There will be a total of 48 combined field training exercises taking place all across the Korean peninsula, including joint airstrike training, joint tactical live fire exercises, joint air-to-air shooting, and air-to-ground bombing exercises.
This means the Allies will conduct twice the number of field exercises in the first half of this year, compared to the same period last year. But this year's exercises won't be limited to just the U.S. and South Korea. Member states of the United Nations Command, including Australia, Canada, France, and the UK, will also be taking part. And the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission will observe the drills based on the Armistice Agreement. The combined exercises are expected to anger North Korea, as the regime sees joint training as an invasion rehearsal. There is a possibility that the North may engage in provocations during the exercise period in protest. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Defense chiefs of Seoul and Washington talked via phone this morning, having reaffirmed the alliance amid Pyongyang's continued hostility. Similar talks are expected when Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol meets with his U.S. counterpart in Washington in the coming hours. Our correspondent Kim Jung-sil reports.
With North Korea continuing its military provocations, South Korea and the U.S. are enhancing their defense and security cooperation. On Wednesday morning, Defense Minister Shin Won-sik held phone talks with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. The two discussed shared defense and security priorities on the Korean Peninsula and underscored the strength of the ROK-U.S. alliance. The South Korean Defense Ministry released a statement saying the two defense chiefs reviewed the security situation on the Korean Peninsula while reaffirming the alliance's strength. The top priorities were Pyongyang's recent missile launches and its artillery barrage fired into the sea last month. In early January, the North fired hundreds of artillery shells into the West Sea near the maritime border between the South and North. The defense chiefs also discussed illegal arms transfers between Pyongyang and Moscow, noting that strengthened military cooperation between North Korea and Russia threatens peace and stability not only on the Korean Peninsula, but also in the international arena. They agreed to take strict measures against the threats posed by recent Moscow-Pyongyang ties. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol will meet with his U.S. counterpart, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in Washington on Wednesday local time. The two will likely discuss issues including economic security, while also touching upon extended deterrence against North Korea's nuclear threats. Cho is also expected to ask the Biden administration to listen to South Korean companies' concerns about the Inflation Reduction and CHIPS Acts. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
In other news, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg today met with chiefs of Samsung and LG Electronics to discuss enhancing cooperation in the extended reality business. The meetings came during Zuckerberg's three-day visit to Seoul after he arrived in South Korea on Tuesday for his first visit here in a decade. With LG Electronics CEO Cho Ju-wan, Zuckerberg discussed the development of XR devices and the possibility of future collaboration in AI development. Cho forecasts that XR devices produced from the collaboration with Meta were expected to be commercialized in 2025. Later on the same day, Zuckerberg also met with Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong. They are also known to have discussed possible cooperation in AI semiconductors and XR businesses. Before concluding his trip, Zuckerberg is expected to meet with President Yoon on Thursday. Moving on, Seoul's top diplomat Cho Tae-yeol is in the U.S., as we have mentioned in our previous report. He has met with officials there to reaffirm cooperation in regional security and economic challenges. Choi Min-jung explains.
South Korea and the U.S. have reaffirmed that their economic cooperation has further expanded their alliance beyond military security. Seoul's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol met with the U.S. Director of the National Economic Council, Lael Brainard, on Tuesday at the White House to discuss the two countries' economic synergy. According to the Foreign Ministry, Cho assessed that economic cooperation between the two countries has strengthened based on the Seoul-Washington Alliance and the 2012 Chorus Free Trade Agreement. He also evaluated that the U.S. government is creating results beneficial to both countries, thanks to close consultation with the Korean government in implementing economic policies, such as the CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. Echoing the sentiment, Brainard said she appreciated the alliance had grown beyond military security and that it's now working to respond to global economic uncertainties as well. She also stressed that South Korean companies operating in the U.S. and American companies operating in South Korea are contributing greatly to creating a stronger supply chain ecosystem as well as quality jobs. The two sides agreed to continue cooperating closely in the future. To do that, Minister Cho requested that the U.S. ensure that South Korean companies continue to receive treatment and incentives commensurate with their investment scale and contribution level in the U.S. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump won the Michigan primaries on Tuesday, but early results highlighted some of their political concerns ahead of the November election. Jung Won-ju explains what those are.
U.S. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump won their respective primaries in Michigan on Tuesday. Results from the primaries so far indicate that the two are on course to face off in November's presidential election. Early results from Michigan, however, revealed some of their biggest political vulnerabilities and concerns. Mr. Trump has now swept the first 5 states on the Republican primary calendar, but there have been signs of struggles with some influential voter blocs that have favored former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley in previous contests. Ms. Haley's strongest performances on Tuesday night came in areas with college towns like Ann Arbor, home to the University of Michigan, and suburbs around Detroit. Mr. Trump, meanwhile, has underperformed with suburban voters and people with college degrees and faces a faction within his own party that believes he broke the law in one or more of the criminal cases against him. President Biden's victory in the Democratic primary also came with a warning as an uncommitted campaign organized by activists disillusioned with his handling of the war in Gaza made an impact. Michigan has the largest concentration of Arab Americans in the United States. In a statement, Mr. Biden did not directly acknowledge the uncommitted effort, but praised the progress his administration has made with Michigan voters. Despite a recent tweak in rhetoric and a call for a pause in fighting, Biden and his team have stood by Israel's right to defend itself. Meanwhile, according to the Hamas-led health ministry, the death toll in Gaza is at nearly 30,000, mostly women and children. As the civilian death toll continues to rise, so too has the pressure on President Biden to publicly push for a ceasefire. 정은주, Arirang News.
On the international front, following remarks from world leaders over possible troop support for Ukraine, NATO quickly shut down the idea. Russia also sent a stark warning that if NATO member countries do send troops, conflict between the military alliance and Russia is inevitable. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The issue of sending troops was raised at a meeting in Paris on Monday, where European countries discussed ways to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. There, Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico raised the idea of troop support for Ukraine.
Several NATO and European Union member states are considering sending troops to Ukraine at a bilateral level.
French President Emmanuel Macron followed up, saying that there is no agreement on sending troops to Ukraine, but nothing should be ruled out, further stating that everything must be done so that Russia does not win. Looking to avoid further complicating the situation, EU and NATO member countries quickly expressed that they have no intention of having their countries send troops to support Ukraine. They include the leaders of Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary, who during a meeting in Prague strongly shot down the idea. EU and NATO member nations like Germany, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Spain also rejected deploying soldiers. The Pentagon on Tuesday also expressed an unwillingness to send military forces, despite being one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine during the 2-year-long war.
We have no plans to send U.S. service members to fight in Ukraine. The president has been pretty clear on that, and that continues to be our position.
Meanwhile, French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné on Tuesday clarified Macron's comments that Paris could send troops to Ukraine, saying the troops could be used in specific ways, such as mine clearance, while not directly fighting against Russia. Meanwhile, the Kremlin sent a stark warning to NATO, saying that any troop support for Ukraine would inevitably result in direct conflict with Russia. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Soon, text messages warning of emergencies in South Korea will be sent out in both Korean and English. The Interior Ministry announced on Wednesday that it's revamping its emergency text alert system to include critical information in both languages. The ministry explained this will help non-Korean speaking residents and visitors to take necessary responsive measures to warnings about earthquakes and fires, among others. Multilingual disaster alerts have been offered for a decade via the Emergency Ready app mobile application provided by the government. But the new text alerts will be sent out to all mobile phone users registered in Korea, improving information access in urgent situations. And on the entertainment front, the debut film by Korean-Canadian director Celine's song, Past Lives, is set to hit theaters in Korea next week. Ahead of its premiere, the director herself visited Korea to talk about her work. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
Celine's song didn't expect her movie to become this huge until about a year ago. 2023 was a stellar year for the Korean-Canadian director's debut film, Past Lives. Starring Greta Lee and Yoo Tae-oh, the film has clinched over 70 awards at numerous film festivals and is now setting its sights on the Oscars next month. Past Lives has earned 2 nominations, Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. It all started when Song was drinking at a bar in New York with her husband and childhood friend.
None of them spoke each other's language, so I had to act as an interpreter. In the process, I got this special feeling that I was interpreting 2 sides of my identity, history, and personal narrative.
The film follows Nora, a playwright living in New York, as she reunites with her childhood sweetheart, Hae-sung, after 24 years following her emigration to Canada. This is where the concept of 인연, meaning destiny or fate in Korean, comes in. Even though the two are not together in this life, they believe their decades-long connection extends from their past lives and will continue into their next lives.
I believe 인연 is the only word that can describe the relationship between Hae-sung and Nora. While it's a Korean term, the emotion it signifies resonates universally. That's why people, regardless of their background, have shared with me that they understood its meaning after watching the film.
When I first read this scenario, I was touched by how it eloquently and simply explained what 인연 is.
Song weaved autobiographical elements into the film, drawing from her decade-long experience as a playwright, meeting her husband at an artist residency, and navigating the complexities of balancing multiple cultures. There is a reason for this.
I believe a personal story is essential when reaching out to an audience. If I want to make my creation meaningful to others, I believe I should delve into something only I can uniquely contribute or excel in.
Past Lives premieres in Korea on March 6th. 송진, Arirang News.
Even though the calendar says it's the beginning of spring, the morning air is still cold. The temperature in Seoul this morning was 3.2 degrees, bringing the chill of late winter. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start the day at 3 degrees, similar to today's. However, unlike today, there will be less temperature fluctuation as daily highs will not move up too far from the lows. The rain will start tomorrow morning from Jeju Island and areas in the southwest. As a low-pressure system from the southwest passes, rain is expected to expand to the Chungcheongdo provinces during the day and stop at night. As for the amount of rain, 10 to 40 millimeters on Jeju Island and 5 to 20 in the Chungcheongdo provinces in the south of the country. Tomorrow, Daejeon and Daegu will start at 2 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will get up to 9 degrees, along with Chuncheon, Busan, and Jeju. Daegu and Gyeongju, 8 degrees Celsius. After the rain tomorrow, a strong cold snap is expected from the beginning of March. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Take care.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, The power of a better world.